my eyes are just like squinty and like they haven't been fully open in a lot of my last lives, and it's because I've been just like squinting because I can't read, and it's a big secret that I've been hiding from you all. And I'm so sorry, but here we are. Also, it's raining outside, so if you hear a little pitter-patter, that's going to be the rain, and if you hear the pitter-patter of long talons that need to be clipped on the floor and some snorting, that is my sweet, sweet English bulldog Moira, who is eating her breakfast now, but will likely be joining us. So, welcome. Hello. Okay. let's just get right into it, shall we? All right. Thank you for being here. So, Jeffrey Epstein's main associate, Ghislaine Maxwell, goes on trial in a few weeks, and Prince Andrew just got sued by one of Epstein's victims. So what the heck is going on, and how did we get here? Let's dive in. If you're new here, my name's Leija. I'm a real-life lawyer on a mission to demystify the law and how it affects your everyday life. That being said, I may be a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. Nothing that I say should ever be construed as legal advice, and you should always seek the advice of a licensed attorney before making any legal decisions. Let's jump right in. A reminder that super chats and super stickers are activated. They go towards literally keeping the lights on in here. I will also say that YouTube probably will not let me monetize this video because we will be talking about some subject matter that is not very appropriate. So content warning, we're talking about Jeff Epstein, so you get it. But also your generosity is very appreciated because I probably won't make any ad revenue off this video. They demonetized my SB8 videos as well. Apparently advertisers don't like touchy subjects, but you know, we forge ahead. Okay? So thank you in advance. I will take questions at the end. All right, so I watched like every Epstein documentary available, but I'll keep it simple. We'll go into a little bit of a background about Jeff Epstein, because he kind of ties this whole story together, and in case you need like a refresher on what the hell happened there. All right. So, who is Epstein? He was this guy from Coney Island, really this twerp. He was just this like kind of small statured college dropout who kind of charmed his way into the right rooms. He was, I'm horrified to say, a Capricorn, but I do not count him as one of my own, obviously. Though I will say the power and the money-hungry thing in an unevolved Capricorn does fit the bill, but I digress. Okay, so first, after he dropped out of college, he became a teacher at a prestigious Manhattan grade school, a job that he got allegedly by lying about his undergrad credentials. So like right off the bat, we're off to a bad start. Through that job, he met some very influential parents of his students because very rich people like to send their students to very prestigious schools in Manhattan. It's unclear whether he perpetrated any abuse at that school, but there were rumors that he behaved inappropriately towards some students, and it's clear that it is creepy that he was allowed around children in a professional setting at all. So anyway, he eventually weasels his way onto Wall Street by wooing the right guy. That guy was this guy, Alan Greenberg. He's the CEO of Bear Stearns, whose kids went to the school. Then Epstein actually gets fired from this school that he's teaching at for poor performance, and then he's immediately just offered a job at Bear Stearns. It truly makes no sense. Anyway, he starts at Bear Stearns in 1976 at the age of 23 as a low-level junior assistant to a floor trader. And within 4 years, he was made partner. Like, this is some American dream shit that could only happen to a white man in the 70s and 80s. I cannot imagine how much cocaine was involved. You know what I mean? Anyway, he's 27. He's a partner at Bear Stearns, and he's interacting with some of the wealthiest people in the world because he's helping them manage their money. This is a very powerful position for an allegedly charming guy to be in. Anyway, he then gets fired again, this time from Bear Stearns, for like a securities violation of some sort, but it like never got reported. He remains friends with his clients and the people he worked with there. And he kind of gets off without it turning into any, like, there's no consequences. I don't know. I'm not fully understanding what the heck happened there, but he gets fired, but then like no punishment. And then he just goes on to open his own consulting firm. And then the 80s are a bit of a blur as to like what exactly Jeff Epstein's doing in the 80s. It was alleged that he was with the CIA, like a CIA operative, potentially, and was working with arms dealers during the Iran-Contra conflict. I don't know. It's very unclear to me why a CIA would want a twerp who dropped out of college, but maybe he lied his way in, you know? Maybe he wooed the right people and he didn't have to lie anymore because people just like him somehow. As with my last video about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, which you should watch if you haven't after this live stream, I will always be screaming about privilege and prestige and money. It's usually a bunch of bullshit. It's a lot of people who aren't that smart and don't really know what they're doing, who are given money and connections out of luck, maybe because they were born into it, maybe because they got in the ear of one influential person and that's all it takes. Like, we're all sheep people, and the more we buy into the idea that someone at Harvard or on Wall Street or with millions of dollars is somehow better or more knowledgeable or can be more trusted, the more we give opportunities for people like Jeff Epstein to just rise through the ranks despite having no discernible skills or credentials. Anyway. Then, in the late 80s, Epstein founds his own financial management firm, again using the connections that he made in Bear Stearns, and one of his clients was billionaire Leslie Wexner. This guy. Now, Leslie is the CEO, or was the CEO of L Brands, formerly known as The Limited, and of Victoria's Secret. And Epstein was given incredible control over Wexler's fortune. And then Epstein also was given access to Wexler's sprawling Ohio mansion. And you know it's got to be freaking huge because it's in Ohio. You know how much further a few $1,000,000 will get you in Ohio? Like, the thing is massive. Anyway, Epstein was paid millions to manage Wexner's money, and he used his connections to get into Victoria's Secret shows, and he also would claim that he was recruiting Victoria's Secret models, which is a very enticing connection to make when you're a young girl interested in modeling and looking for a big break, and he knew that. Yeah. So, with these millions that he earned, he had numerous properties, including an island, a whole island that he owned in the Virgin Islands, the largest private residence in Manhattan, and a mansion in Palm Beach, Florida, which is apparently a place where rich people live. I will never understand why you would take your millions and go to Florida, but okay. Anyway, it's at these locations and the Wexner Mansion in Ohio where he perpetrated his abuse of minors. Especially in Florida, he would have people like Ghislaine Maxwell hunt out girls and have them come to his place in exchange for money. Oftentimes they were girls who were interested in becoming masseuses, so they would say, like, come, we'll pay you money, you'll get training, and you'll massage a billionaire. I don't know, it worked. So then the girls would come on the idea that they were going to get some training, and then that's where they would assault them. Sometimes just Jeff, sometimes Ghislaine would join in. And they would specifically target girls in the poorer parts of Palm Beach, where they were working class girls, where they would be more desperate for a chance at some cash, like really messed up stuff. He was, however, eventually charged in 2008 with procuring minors for prostitution in Florida. But at the time, for some reason, the district attorney down there, this guy, Alex Acosta, who, by the way, eventually goes on to become Trump's Secretary of Labor. Trump has some weird connections to this case, I will point out. This guy offers Epstein a sweetheart non-prosecution agreement where Epstein would plead guilty to 2 counts, even though upwards of like 30 girls came forward. And he would serve 18 months in prison and be registered as a sex offender. That was the deal. And he agreed to it, even though, like, if they'd charged him to the full extent of all of the claims they could have brought against him, he would have been locked up for probably decades. So in 2008, he serves his jail sentence, 18 months, during which he's given special privileges. Like, he can just leave for 16-hour days on a work release, and his cell was never locked, and he had his own rooms where, like, TVs were installed for him. You know, he just, like, basically showed up to the prison to sleep at night. He was a registered sex offender in New York, which is where he lived permanently, or, like, his permanent residence. And he was supposed to check in with a probation officer every 90 days, but that requirement apparently just wasn't ever enforced, allegedly. And he serves his time and he walks free in 2010, and he got to just continue living his life. All right. Then you kind of know the rest of the story. More of his victims come forward. There's investigation in New York into the allegations. Eventually, a case is brought against him. He is arraigned. He is put into custody. He's found to be a flight risk, so he's not allowed to make bail. He attempts suicide once. They put him on suicide watch. Then mysteriously in the middle of the night, while no one's watching him on suicide watch, he allegedly hangs himself with a bedsheet. There are conspiracy theories about this. I will caution, some of them are used to be like really anti-Semitic. I'll let you Google that for yourself, but like let's not get too deep into the conspiracy theories. It is fishy why he was kind of left on his own when he was supposed to be on suicide watch. He did have a lot of dirt on a lot of very powerful people. He had connections to, like I said, Trump, Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, like these very powerful people, not to mention the internationally powerful people that he had connections with. And he allegedly recorded everything that happened at his New York mansion, reportedly as kind of blackmail, so he would never get turned in. And it might have backfired on him, who knows? Or sometimes reality is a lot more boring than the conspiracy theories want to believe, and he might have just realized the jig was up and decided to end it himself. That's also a possibility. So that's Jeff Epstein. That's his demise, but who the heck is Ghislaine Maxwell? Where does she fit into all of this? She's the daughter of Robert Maxwell, who was a very wealthy media tycoon in the UK. And he was known for being exceptionally harsh and controlling and having a bad temper. But apparently she was daddy's favorite. She attended Oxford University and was quite the socialite in London in the 80s. She was very well connected because of her father's wealth and influence. And that's allegedly when she first met Jeff Epstein through their mutual wealthy friends. However, their relationship wouldn't blossom until a few years later. Then in 1991, Ghislaine's father mysteriously died, reportedly by accidental drowning off his yacht. But she maintains to this day that he was murdered because he also had a lot of powerful people that maybe didn't want him to be alive. I don't know. There's a lot of layers there. There's a whole documentary on Ghislaine Maxwell on Peacock. If you're interested, I did pay for a month of Peacock so that I could watch this 3-part Ghislaine Maxwell docuseries. It was interesting. Soon after Ghislaine's father's death, it was discovered that her father had fraudulently appropriated the pensions of all of the employees in his media empire. There were reportedly over 440 million British pounds in pension funds missing, which affected 32,000 people. And the workers then just didn't get their pensions that they'd spent years earning during their careers. It was just gone. And the government bankrupted the family to get the money back. But the Maxwell reputation was completely ruined. So in 1991, amidst this scandal, Ghislaine moves to New York City to kind of try to fly under the radar. Thanks to an apparently untouchable trust account that her father had established for her in Liechtenstein, can't make this shit up, she was receiving a yearly income of $80,000. Can you imagine? That's in 1991 dollars too, which amounts today to around $160,000 a year. So she was fine. We've been joined by Moira. She might be a little goopy, but she can come on screen. Oh my god, she's getting so big. Hi, baby. Okay, why don't you have a seat? Sweet girl. Okay. This is Moira, if you've not met her. All right. So she was doing fine, living in New York. Through the connections that she already had, she managed to work her way up in the social scene in New York City as well, throughout the 90s. She was seen as this like effervescent, vivacious person who just drew people to her. And I feel like so many of these fraud cases, there's always these people that are described as like incredibly charismatic and easy to like. And it makes me kind of question everything because I find it really hard to believe. Like in interviews and stuff, she seems kind of withdrawn and quiet. Like I can't imagine walking into a room and seeing her and being like, oh my God, I love her. She's amazing. I can't get enough, you know? Like I like to think that my powers of reading people wouldn't be won over by these fraudsters. But like, maybe I'm kidding myself. I don't know. I wasn't in the room. It just is hard. It's so hard to believe seeing them now from the outside. So it was during this time in the 90s that she reconnected with Epstein and their relationship blossomed. Though it's unclear whether they were like in an actual relationship or like what they really were, you know? She was definitely his assistant. She ran his life. She hired and fired all of his staff. And allegedly, she also found him the girls that he assaulted. Some speculate that she wanted to be in a relationship with him, but he just wouldn't commit, probably because he was a pedophile, you know? Anyway, there have been parallels drawn between him and her father, controlling men that she wanted to please, so he just took her father's place in her life. Who's to say? The psychology of it all is really fascinating and also horrifying. Anyway, in the last decade, so Ghislaine spends the 90s and 2000s just hanging out with Epstein, running his empire, and allegedly perpetrating these crimes. And then in the last decade, this past 10 years, Maxwell has been named as a defendant in a number of civil lawsuits, so non-criminal lawsuits, which alleged victims of Epstein came forward and claimed that Ghislaine co-conspired with him and even committed abuse herself. Okay, here you go. One of the central figures in this is Virginia Roberts, aka Virginia Giuffre. She is this gal. I think I'm saying that last name right. I mean, I'm not, because it's Italian and I'm not pronouncing it right, but the way that people in America have been pronouncing it is Giuffre. She alleges that she was recruited by Maxwell in 1999 when she was still a minor, and at the time that they recruited her, she was working as a spa attendant. She wanted to be a masseuse. She was working as a spa attendant at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. An interesting connection. Trump has also been pictured numerous times with Epstein. I don't know, man. That doesn't seem to bother anyone who supports him. And a lot of his supporters, Republicans, also claim to be vehemently against child trafficking. And yet, little sus. Anyway, so Virginia Giuffre sues Maxwell in court for defamation in 2016. Because at this point, Virginia had come forward and alleged these crimes that Maxwell had committed against her, and Ghislaine called her a liar. And so then Virginia sues her for defamation. And they eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed sum, though it's alleged that Maxwell paid Virginia millions. And this is important to note because the documents and the deposition testimony that was taken during that civil lawsuit in 2016 was recently unsealed and was pretty damning and will likely be used in Ghislaine's upcoming criminal trial, which I will get to. All right, so where does Prince Andrew fit into all of this? Who even is this guy? Because I'm from America, and I have to admit that I don't pay a ton of attention to the royal family because I don't care. It's as simple as that. All right, so this is Prince Andrew. He is one of Queen Elizabeth's sons. So he is uncle to Princes Harry and William, and he is 9th in line to the throne. He's big kahunas in the British royalty circuit. He was also married to Sarah Ferguson, aka Fergie, the original Fergie, not the singer. And they had a very public divorce in the 90s. All right, so Ghislaine somehow knew him, again, because of the connections and the wealth that her father had brought her, and she introduced him, Prince Andrew, introduced him to Epstein sometime in the late 90s. There is a very infamous picture of Prince Andrew with Virginia Roberts when she was a minor. I will show it now. With his arm around her and Ghislaine Maxwell in the background, allegedly taken at Ghislaine Maxwell's property in London. Pretty damning. What's wild is that Andrew now claims to have no recollection of any of it, okay? Even though there is evidence of him emailing Ghislaine after Virginia came forward with the allegations, asking Ghislaine about Virginia by name. Yet he then claims to not even know who she was. All right, so Virginia claims that he assaulted her. And now she's brought a civil lawsuit against him to recover monetary damages for the abuse that she alleges that she suffered. Okay, so let's talk about this new lawsuit. It was just filed in August. The complaint is linked below. I will note that Virginia is being represented by David Boies, who is a well-known trial attorney. He often takes on high-profile cases. He's represented Harvey Weinstein, and he was an attorney for Theranos, the now infamous blood testing company I just covered on Tuesday. I'm telling you, the legal world is like 3 people, and they all make questionable decisions about who to represent. They flip-flop around, because that's how you found the money. You know, you got to find the right cases, no matter which side you're on. So this is a civil lawsuit. It was filed by Virginia Giuffre. It is not a criminal indictment. And we're in the Southern District of New York, so it's out of Manhattan, which is also where Ghislaine's trial will be held in November. In the complaint, Virginia claims that when she was 17, Prince Andrew assaulted her at Epstein's mansion in Manhattan. So she's suing him for battery and for intentional infliction of emotional distress, also known as IIED. IIED is commonly accompanied in a claim for assault and battery, kind of often is an additional claim that they throw in, kind of for the pain and suffering that happens because of the assault. And the allegations in this complaint are pretty bad. She claims that Andrew started showing up frequently in Epstein's flight logs in 1999 to his private island and to Palm Beach, because Epstein would fly very powerful, famous people to his island where a lot of alleged crimes occurred. Epstein and Maxwell attended Andrew's 40th birthday party, so like they were close enough that they got that invite. And then Andrew invited Epstein to his daughter's 18th birthday party. That happened 1 month after Epstein had been charged with procuring a minor for prostitution in Florida. Like, this is all alleged, but if true, this clearly shows that Andrew really didn't have a problem with looking the other way when his buddy was accused of being fucking heinous, even where it could possibly endanger his own adolescent daughter. Allegedly. Virginia claims that Prince, what the fuck is this guy's name? Prince Andrew? I keep forgetting. I just don't care. Prince Andrew, she claims that Prince Andrew assaulted her on numerous occasions, including at Maxwell's residence in London, at the New York mansion, and at Epstein's private island, and that Andrew knew her age when the assault occurred. It also alleges that despite promising to cooperate with the authorities regarding Epstein's co-conspirators, instead, Andrew has refused to cooperate with authorities or with attorneys representing Epstein's victims, which is pretty sus. Pretty sus, Andrew. All right? Moira has fallen asleep if you can hear the gentle snoring in the background. I hope you find it delightful and calming on this lovely morning. All right. So again, she's claiming battery and intentional infliction of emotional distress, also known as IIED, and she's asking the court to award her monetary damages. Both of these claims are kind of misunderstood, so let's just briefly look at the elements, like what she has to prove in order to bring these claims. So first we have battery. So we use the term assault in these cases, like just in parlance and the media and stuff, but legally speaking, what she's claiming is called battery. Assault is just fear of imminent, harmful, and unwanted touch, but battery is the actual unwanted touch occurring. It's a little technicality, but like just so we're clear, she's claiming battery because she's claiming he did actually do the unwanted touching. So the general elements that she needs to prove for battery are that he acted, it was an act that he made with intent to cause a harmful or offensive contact, and that intent, to clarify, he didn't have to intend to harm her or for the touch to be offensive. He just had to have intentionally done the act. Basically, it's trying to bar, like if someone takes your hand and slaps someone else across the face with it, you can't be found liable for battery because it was an involuntary thing because someone else forced you to do it. Whereas here, she's saying he intentionally did it. He was not forced, it was voluntary. And that the actual contact did occur. So an act, the intent to do the act, and then the contact actually happens. And as a side note, this is a weird technicality. It doesn't actually have to be contact with like your physical body to the other physical body. If you hit someone with a baseball bat, you could still be found liable for battery. Just so we're clear. Anyway, so that's battery. And then she's also claiming intentional infliction of emotional distress, IIED. The defendant must have acted intentionally or recklessly. The defendant contact must be extreme and outrageous. The contact must cause severe emotional distress. The extreme and outrageous is kind of not black and white. So what is considered an extreme and outrageous is kind of, you look to like what would be found to be completely outside the bounds of normal decency, what would be like shocking and horrible to the average person. Something like that is what a judge is going to look at to determine whether or not the conduct was extreme and outrageous. In this case, if she can prove that he did these things, extreme and outrageous isn't going to be difficult to find. Like, we as a society have accepted that child assault is extreme and outrageous. That's not going to be hard. The hard thing is going to be able to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that he did it. Civil court, the bar is lower. She doesn't have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she did it. That's criminal. If the prosecutors were to try to bring a case against him, they would have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he did this. She, in the civil lawsuit, just has to prove by a preponderance of the evidence, mainly meaning that like the evidence tends to show that he did it. It seems probable based on the evidence that he did it. All right, so this was filed back in August, this lawsuit. And now a couple days ago, there was an initial hearing for the case in the Southern District of New York, during which Prince Andrew's attorneys claimed that the lawsuit is barred because apparently there was a confidential settlement that Virginia reached with Jeffrey Epstein back in 2009 in Florida. And they also claimed that Prince Andrew wasn't properly served. Meaning that the physical papers indicating that a lawsuit had been filed and with a copy of the lawsuit was not given to the right person in the proper course of service. It's like this technicality. It is a valid objection to a lawsuit because we want to make sure that like people who are getting sued know they're getting sued. It's like within their rights. And usually in those cases where there's improper service, the case could get dismissed without prejudice, meaning that they can refile the case and try to properly serve the defendant this time. However, a lot of the times the courts just want to work out the service issue without having to bog down the process with like refiling things. Like they just want the parties to figure it out, you know? Clearly he's on notice, his attorneys showed up to this thing, but they're still saying that it wasn't properly served. And according to the docket, in case you're unclear, a docket is like the list of every document and every event that happens in a case. They can get super, super long, but since this is a relatively newer case, the docket's pretty short. I have downloaded it as a PDF. It's in a link below. You're welcome. Prince Andrew was served at his residence, according to the docket. It says service was accepted by Metropolitan Police Office / head of security at Royal Lodge, which is where he lives. At least in the U.S., as long as someone over 18 accepts service at the residence where the person who is being sued lives, that's proper service. However, service has to be proper in the location where it's being served, so in the UK, and they're alleging that service was not proper. And apparently the judge is pretty concerned with that, so if nothing else, the court might intervene to make sure that the prince is properly served. Now, just yesterday, the High Court in Britain agreed to intervene if necessary to make sure that the papers get properly served. So like Andrew's getting served one way or another basically, though they want the parties to work it out amongst themselves if possible, but the High Court has agreed to intervene if they don't. All right, so now they have to file whatever motion that they want to file to try to get this thing dismissed. They need to file it, and oral argument on the motion is set for October 13th in New York. So we'll see what they come up with as to the service issue and as to any alleged settlement agreement. If it was between Virginia and Jeff Epstein, who knows how binding they're going to find that, because this is as to Ghislaine Maxwell, who is a different person. This is as to Prince Andrew, who's a different person. So it's unclear whether they'd even find any alleged settlement agreement to be enforceable at this point. Okay. Ghislaine Maxwell. In November, on November 29th, Ghislaine Maxwell's criminal trial is set to begin, again in New York. I've linked her indictment down below. There are 9 counts against her, 6 specifically stemming from 1994 to 1997 and the alleged actions that she took to aid Epstein's sex crimes, and 2 claims are stemming from her allegedly lying under oath in her testimony in that 2016 defamation lawsuit that Virginia Giuffre brought against her. Because again, the deposition testimony that she made was recently unsealed, and a lot of her testimony directly contradicts things that Epstein's victims claim happened. So the 2 counts of perjury related to that 2016 defamation lawsuit, they've been severed from the other counts, and they will be tried separately later. So her November trial is just the first 6 counts, and I'll let you read the complaint if you want to. It gets pretty graphic, but they're basically accusing Ghislaine of grooming girls, knowing they were underage and knowing that Epstein wanted to assault them and that she participated in some of the assaults. The complaint mentions 3 minor victims that are the subject of the charges against Ghislaine. They don't have the names. They're just called minor victims, 1 through 3. The indictment also says Ghislaine groomed these girls by befriending them, normalizing talk about sex and nudity and being nude around them, and then coaxing them into having sex with Epstein because having an adult woman in the room made the girls feel more at ease that what was going on wasn't completely heinous. And because the abuse happened across state lines, that's why the feds got involved. That's why this is a federal case. They were having children go from New York to Florida to a ranch in New Mexico to perpetuate this abuse. Like, this is all according to the indictment. So they're crossing state lines. This is a federal issue at this point. So she is charged with conspiracy and with transporting and enticing minors to travel to engage in illicit sexual acts. That's how they get you if you're the feds, because they have to have, in order to have jurisdictions, it has to be like have crossed state lines, basically. And then separately, she will be tried for perjuring herself during sworn testimony in that defamation lawsuit, during which testimony she said that she swore she had no knowledge of Epstein engaging in any sexual acts with anyone other than herself in the 90s and 2000s. She had no knowledge of him having any sex toys, which is, again, directly contradicts what a lot of his victims claim. And she'd never given Epstein any massages, which, again, a lot of his victims claim that she would join in. So this is all allegedly false. I imagine that the perjury claims were severed and will be tried separately because they were related to a separate incident in a separate lawsuit from 2016. So it made more sense to have those stay separate from the 6 counts against her related to her conduct in the 90s, which makes sense. Jury selection begins in Manhattan at the end of November. All right? So I'll keep you up to date on everything that happens over on my Twitter. I have alerts set up for this, so anything that pops up in the docket, I'll hear about it and I'll let you know. And that's the story. That's where we're at. So we're waiting to hear about any motions to dismiss the Prince Andrew case, and Ghislaine Maxwell's trial starts at the end of November. There we are. I'll take any questions you have now. A reminder that super chats and stickers are enabled, and that I probably won't make any ad revenue off this video because YouTube doesn't like me to talk about these very sensitive subjects. So any of your generosity is greatly appreciated. And while you come up with your questions, I am going to take a moment to thank my Patreon supporters. Yes, I have a Patreon. I share more behind the scenes stuff. I talk about life. I do some live streams. You get early access to my edited videos when they come out. And yeah, it's just a fun little community over there. So consider joining me over there. A special thank you to my Patreon supporters, specifically James McClellan, Ola Swang, Alma Rose, Stuart, and Jessica Rinaldo. Thank you so much for your support. And as always, a big thank you to my multi-platinum patrons, Brett Piantek and Anonymous. You know who you are. Thank you so much for your support. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. So, questions, please send them my way. Do you reckon Prince Andrew will be called to appear in the New York court? I do. I think that this service issue is going to be, well, you know, it depends, because the service issue I think is going to be done away with. I think that's going to be a non-issue. The issue is if they're able to somehow get his side are going to try to file a motion to dismiss about something. That's kind of like the first step in this, and in defending yourself against this, is you file a motion to dismiss. It could be a motion to dismiss for improper service, sure, but it also could be a motion to dismiss claiming that she hasn't brought a cognizable claim against him, meaning that the allegations that she laid out in the complaint aren't enough to even begin to show that she has any sort of claim against him. I don't know if that's gonna fly, but you never know. Like, a lot of cases are, you know, done away with on a motion to dismiss. Honestly, I think this is going to settle out of court, because there's no way that Prince Andrew is going to want this to be drugged through the courts very publicly. Prince Andrew or, like, you know, the Crown. They have enough money to pay this woman off. And that's what's happened in past lawsuits that she's brought. So I can't see this going that far. So actually, I take it back. I don't think he's going to actually end up appearing in court, because I don't think they're ever going to allow it to get that far. Because why would they? They can just pay her off. Yeah. Do you think he'll actually come? Why would he's British royalty? I don't think they're even going to get that far. I take back what I said. All right. Let's see. Let's see what other questions you have. Um, well, okay. Why does American tort law always want people to intend harm? An Australian tort law seldom requires intention. Not all torts require intent. Like negligence, for example. It just means that you owed someone a duty of care, you breached that duty of care, and in doing so, you caused this person's harm. So intention isn't always the case. It is the case in intentional infliction of emotional distress because that's like part of it, part of the name of the tort. But then it's the case in battery only that the person had to have intentionally done the act, not that the person had to intended to hurt the person, if that makes sense. So the person has to have intentionally done it because we don't want people who are involuntarily forced to do things to then be held liable for them. But they don't have to have intended harm, you know? Let's see. Any other questions? Do you know if the Queen has the power to stop him being investigated? I don't. I can't say that I know much about British law or royalty powers. I doubt it. I think in the US we like to think that royalty is also not above the law. I think that was like the whole premise of the revolution, if I remember correctly. So I would assume no. But like I said, I think the power is that they're not going to ever let it go that far. And they're going to try to settle with her by throwing money at the problem. Yeah. Chances of some kind of NDA in the settlement agreement. Yeah, I mean, they'll definitely probably try. I could see Virginia's attorneys coming back to it and being like, no way, like, you can't, like, she experienced abuse and you can't tell us that we have to never talk about it, you know? But I can see them trying. It could become part of that. I mean, there's been a lot of call lately for like the abolishment of NDAs because they lead to these types of abuses being able to just be kind of brushed under the rug and not talked about, literally because they're told not to talk about them. So, yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Considering the Queen, I clicked on the right one. I agree that it'll likely result in settlement, especially if the Crown wishes to maintain social goodwill. Yeah, I don't know how much social goodwill the Crown still has at this point, you know? Maybe I'm wrong. What do you guys think? I feel like the Crown, it's, I don't know, man. I feel like people are getting a little bored of the amount of power these people still have. Do you think that there will be any other public figures that the courts will go after surrounding the Epstein mess? The problem is that he died, and with it died a lot of secrets that they could have gotten out of him by, like, you know, getting warrants to search things. So now that they can't bring a case against him specifically, it's harder to get that information. That's why Ghislaine Maxwell she fell off the radar. I didn't mention that. She fell off the radar kind of after Epstein's death. She just kind of disappeared, probably because she knew she was next. So it took a while for them to even find her. But now that they have her, I think she's the key. She's the one that has the information that might be able to potentially incriminate other people and get them to be, you know, prosecuted, like get the evidence needed to bring a case. Let's see. Of course, my thing just isn't working right now. Queen does not have the power to stop him from being investigated. Parliament could possibly intervene, but the Queen can't just veto investigation. Good to know. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know anything about royalty, British law. I'm a U.S. attorney. All right. Let's see. I don't really know how extradition agreements work. Extradition, as far as I understand it, and I don't have a deep knowledge of it either. As far as I understand it, he would have to be accused of a crime for extradition to come into play. And at this point, it's just a civil lawsuit. So if enough comes out during this civil lawsuit, it could be that they decide to bring a criminal suit against him if he perpetrated crimes in the U.S., and in which case extradition would have to happen. I'm not sure how that works. But at this point, because it's a civil issue, I don't think that extradition would come into play. Let's see. Thank you so much, Loaded Pizza. I also love loaded pizza. Let's see. Just looking through things. Once again, super chats and super stickers are enabled. I will not make any money off ads in this video because we're talking about touchy subjects. All right. All right. So, thank you. Oh, that's a good one. Hold on. I don't think it's popped up yet. One person asked, Kevin Bruce asked, would an out-of-court settlement indicate guilt on the part of Prince Andrew? No. It's like a rule of evidence that any sort of settlement cannot be used to show guilt, because we want people to settle out of court and not be punished for it, I guess. I don't know. It's a thank you so much, Loaded Pizza, for your generosity. It is a it's a rule of evidence that you can't use any settlement or like insurance as evidence against someone for a crime. So like if you were insured against something and that thing happens, then like it can't be used against you. So as far as I know, any sort of settlement agreement, no, it wouldn't be used against him to show guilt. That's a good question though. Where's the proof? She said he did it. He denies it. The proof will come out if this case goes forward. Like, she apparently has evidence. Both sides would share their evidence. They would share any documentation that they have, and then they would go through it, and they would try and find it. But like, who knows? This case has just started, but she apparently has it. Let's see. Okay, that was Pat. Thanks for that question. And then, has there been any other famous cases featuring royalty in the U.S. or these situations? I'm gonna end with this because I don't know. If you know, comment down below. I would love to cover that, because it's, as much as I'm like, don't give a shit about about royalty, I do. It's interesting stuff. It's interesting content. So let me know if you know of any. But I'm gonna wrap up with that question. Thank you so much to everyone who has been here watching, who donated their money to me. It wasn't a donation, I'm sorry. Who were so generous in supporting me here on this channel, because it is a lot of work that I put into this, and a lot of times, because I'm touching on touchy subject matter, I'm not just talking about celebrity gossip over here. YouTube doesn't let ads run because a lot of advertisers don't want to be associated with, apparently, talks about SB8, talks about this type of subject matter, but I'm going to cover it anyway. So your support's greatly appreciated. I hope that everyone has an awesome Thursday. There will not be a live stream tomorrow, but I will be back on Monday with a whole new subject that I have yet to figure out exactly what I'm going to do. So thank you so much to everyone for joining. Have a great weekend. Have a great weekend. Oh my gosh, the weekend's almost here. Have a great weekend. All right, goodbye.